I introduce our moderator, just to let you know, there are going to be some polls during the panel. So you can use Slido. It's either through the app, or if you go to slido.com and enter InfoSec, it's up here, InfoSec 18, then you can access it and join in on the poll. So please do. It's interactive. But I will hand over to the moderator of the panel, Maxine Holt, who is Research Director at Ovum. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emily, and welcome everybody to this panel on security at the speed of business. So just before I ask my fellow panellists to introduce themselves, I'd just like to make a quick comment about a survey that Ovum did of 5,000 organisations across the globe on their leading IT trends. And the #1 trend was developing their digital capabilities. So clearly it's at the front of mind for organisations across the world. But the #2 leading trend, the second trend, was managing security, identity and privacy. So I think organisations get that they need to do both of them hand in hand, but it's a difficult one for them. So we're going to be exploring that during our panel today. So I'd just like to ask each of my panellists to introduce themselves, but also I would really appreciate it if you could give a definition of digital transformation as it stands in your organisation. So Graham, could I start with you, please?
Start with me.
Yeah.
So, hello everyone, I'm Graham Macklin. I'm the Chief Information Officer at Williams Formula One team. Digital for us has been about taking manual processes, bits of paper that were still being transported around our factory as we design and create a Formula One car, and digitising those, making it possible for people to work anywhere with the data that they need in real time.
Okay, Lee.
Hi everyone, my name's Lee. I'm Head of InfoSec for Marks & Spencer. Marks & Spencer has an interesting dynamic in that it's retail. Retail is a tough time at the moment. And those of you watching the news will know exactly how tough that can be for some retailers. So digital transformation for us is really important because it allows us to go to the heart of where the customer is, not where the customer was. If you think of the typical demographic of a Marks & Spencer customer, they're of a certain age, and eventually those customers will no longer shop at Marks & Spencer. It's just a matter of human nature. But the newer generation that are coming up in the next 10 years will be much more in tune with digital ways of interacting with retail, and they'll expect it. They won't just expect it on a website, they'll expect it in store as well. So digital transformation for us is really important, and it's something we're actively pursuing.
Thank you.
Thank you. John Meakin, Chief Information Security Officer at GlaxoSmithKline. So, digital transformation, I guess it's, on a glib level, it's doing better business. It's about communicating with your customer better. But I'm really a nuts and bolts guy, so for me, from a security angle, it's about achieving those goals using cloud, using mobile, and using social media. And it's about working very closely with the business and IT, using typically an agile approach to the delivery of the enabling IT. So better communication with the business, bringing, if you like, better communication with the customer, bringing the customer, if you like, into the process seamlessly.
Thank you. So I'd like to ask you all to join in the poll question, please. So the first poll question that we'd like to ask, hopefully you'll see it on the screen behind me, and Emily described how you can access that. So the question is cybersecurity an enabler of digital transformation, or is it a hindrance? Which is it? Would you take a look at the poll question, please answer, and we will take a look at the results as we go through. There'll also be an opportunity to ask questions from the audience, so if you've got any burning questions, you can either submit them, I think you can submit them through Slido, but you can also put your hand up the good old-fashioned way, and we'll bring a microphone to you, and we'll be able to take your questions to the panel. So in good Blue Peter style, I've already prepared some questions to start the debate off. So I think that the first issue, I think, is the fact that we've talked about, in your introductions, you've talked about the importance of the customer and being kind of customer adaptive and having the customer at the centre of your thinking when it comes to digital transformation. And I think that's essential in highly competitive businesses, as you're all in. So, how can the security function support this delivery at pace for organisations? And do that possibly in line with the organisation's risk appetite? Should we be shutting things down quickly, or how can we actually support the delivery at pace? So, Lee, do you want to give an answer from an M&S?
Thanks. So there are a few colleagues from M&S in the audience today, cyber M&S, so I can't say too many lies because they'll catch me out on it later on. But I'll try and get away with it. So Agile is a methodology that we are fast adopting in Marks and Spencer's. Those of you who don't know what Agile is, I won't go through it. But there is a cadence of change in a particular in a sprint. And our cadence is 2 weeks, which is what we believe is appropriate for our organisation, given the amount of change we want to go through. So if you consider it's basically like a mini project, a sprint. So if we're going through that many changes every 2 weeks, and there are multiple sprints going on at the same time, then that's how we deliver at pace. The point is about where cybersecurity comes into that. Well, it's not really something over the top of it. It's not really something you do in addition to it. It's just something you do as you do agility. And those organisations that succeed are the ones that actually bake into agility security, so that everybody who's part of that agile journey understands what they need to do with respect to security. So that's.
Is that baked into the teams that are delivering that? They have a security culture. They're thinking about security first.
I don't want to paint roses. I don't want to pretend like it's perfect. And I don't think any CISO here would pretend otherwise in their organisation. I'm sure there's one or two out there that poster childs for the industry. But the reality is things go well and things don't go so well. And I think those organisations that succeed are those that adapt to change quickly, recognise when things are going wrong, and just stop. So yes, it is important that you bake security into their responsibilities, in particular the first line of governance. But equally, you then have to have a checking function as well to make sure that they're doing it, because they're humans at the end of the day, and human beings are generally lazy. That's all of you. Yeah.
So John from DSP.
Yeah, it's as Lee has indicated, it's actually really quite tough for a security team faced with this challenge of moving at the speed of business, as the title implies. But again, if I can put it succinctly, for me, the lessons for the security team is you've got to be there and you've got to be confident. What I mean by that is you've got to change your approach to the way your work comes to you to fit that agile, that very rapid cycling through. But the main reason you're there is not to tell them how to do security, and I'll come back to that in a minute, but it's to tell them what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable. In other words, you've got to be really on point as to what is the risk that's implied in whatever the current story is turning out to be in terms of systems, in terms of information, in terms of business functionality. You've got to be able to analyze that risk against a baseline of risk that represents what is normal in the organization. And you've got to give the team the answer, and you've got to stick to it, and you've got to be confident in doing that. Now, okay, the team as a whole can then bring those risk decisions contributing to those stories back to base, and there can be a wash-up session. But there's no point in trying to work as a security expert in an agile environment if you've got to go away and think about it for a week or even an hour. You've got to be there and you've got to be confident.
From William's perspective,
probably slightly different to what John and Lee have described, because I kind of represent the SMB. We're 900 people. We don't have a separate security function. So my responsibility is both driving digital transformation and leading IT risk. So I have a split personality in terms of, right, we need to go, but we need to do it in the right way. So we tend to do it through partnerships and working with some of the biggest vendors who are prepared to come and work with us because we're Williams, and to give us that expertise and that advice and guidance that these guys will bring to their companies. I'm getting that from external vendors who come and help us. So on the one hand, we just want to drive innovation. We've got deadlines, just as most businesses do. So first test of the Formula One season, first race, first European race, and then the new car build when we start building next year's car. Those don't move. I have to hit certain targets for those, no matter what. But at the same time, we've got to protect the company as well. The reputation of Williams is really important. We have an advanced engineering company that's commercializing what we do in Formula One, and that business is growing enormously and getting into all sorts of industries. And they're doing that on the back of our reputation. So I spend a lot of my time worrying about reputation protection and not getting in the way, because I don't think I get to say no anymore as a CIO, if we ever did, for the CIOs in the room. We certainly don't now. So it's that balance.
So what role do you think external parties can play in helping you on that journey? Because you said you used third parties and partners and so on to help you with that. What sort of role do they play? Are they pivotal? Do they help drive the security in the digital invention?
They're absolutely critical to me. Most CIOs, and I do most of the time, spend our time trying to avoid vendors and suppliers and not scanning your badge at conferences. But actually, the ones that we bring on the inside, like Symantec and Target that we work with, BT, who've helped us secure our network at our boundary, and as we travel around the globe, setting up networks in all of these countries like China and Russia and so on, where we have Formula One races, they're helping us to protect our infrastructure, our people, our data. So they're absolutely critical to us because we don't have that expertise in-house.
And Lee, do you use third parties, external parties?
Yeah, we do. We've got an MSP, Marks & Spencer. We've just signed a great relationship with this third party, which I won't name just yet. But they are absolutely critical. And we have one single large vendor supported by many other smaller vendors that go through that large vendor. Exactly, as Graham suggested, that it's critical to the way we do things. Without them, we wouldn't be able to move at pace. More importantly, if we boil it down to what it comes down to, we wouldn't be able to move at pace cheaply. Because your MSP comes in a lot cheaper than lots of little broken down component parts of suppliers and, your traditional workforce. That's what it comes down to.
I think from my point of view, slightly different take. Yes, I agree. Third parties are essential. If I stand back and look at the sort of risk outcome from all of this agile digital transformation work, and I look at what the residual risk levels are, they aren't necessarily high. So how does third party help me with that? Well, third parties help me with that actually using your example. If the risks are higher, that means you're going to have to monitor and respond very rapidly if any of those risks are realized. And for me, no internal function faced with that challenge can try to do it all themselves. So having those partnerships with very credible providers of things like managed security, monitoring, response, and so on is a critical part of going on this digital transformation journey.
It's good to hear. So it's not just the smaller companies. It's good to hear that these guys are doing the same thing.
Absolutely, and that's certainly something we've seen, that larger organisations are faced with the same problems around staffing and resources and everything else. So yeah, they're doing exactly the same sort of thing, engaging with their parties extensively. I'd like to kind of come a bit onto the people side of things, because we've talked about people a little bit. But I think that we talk about education and awareness, and we keep trying to tell organisations that they need to better train their employees. But should we be doing more as part of a digital transformation initiative to actually look at changing behaviour? We shouldn't just be trying to train people and then they tick a box and then they go on to do the next thing. How can we encourage our organisation, and that's not only your employees but your workers, your temporary workers, your customers even, your partners and suppliers? How can we encourage them to change their security behaviour so that they've got security front of mind? Graham, I know you and I have spoken about this quite a bit anyway, so would you like to
putting people at the heart of your security. I think I used to believe that the humans were the weak link in the chain, and I had to monitor them and find out when they were going wrong and deal with it. And actually I realised some years ago, in a lot of the discussions that we've had, that actually people are your strongest part of your security. And so we put people at the centre of what we're doing. And we spend a lot of time explaining to them how they're protecting Williams, how they're protecting our reputation. That when we win a contract in defence or in retail or in medical, it's their work it's what they're doing to protect the company that's helping us. So when other Formula One teams got hit last year with some of the big viruses and we didn't, some of it was luck, I'll admit that, but a lot of it was down to our people being very aware of the risks that are out there and how to protect themselves. And we put a lot of time and effort into that. Every new person that joins Williams, I sit down with them and I talk them through some of the risks that we're seeing. And that's the other important thing, take the data. Either the incidents that are happening, hopefully to other Formula One teams, not to us, take those incidents and talk about them. So incidents are really useful, but just talk about the culture at Williams, and culture is really important. The culture at Williams, family company, so Frank Williams is still our team principal leading the team. It's about the loyalty to him and how people behave. And as much as possible, I try not to block things because then people are forced to find ways around that because I'm preventing them from doing their job. So as much as possible, we operate trust and verify.
Just before I move on to the other panellists, this is a good point to put up and I'll come back to the first poll response, but the second poll question is about security culture. So if you could all take a look at this as well, how mature is the security culture in your organisation? Is it very mature? Is it mature? Is it average? Is it poor? Or do you not know what the security culture is like in your organisation? So Lee, from your perspective, how is it?
I'm just watching that, and I'm watching the colleagues from M&S, I'm hoping they're selecting very, very mature. Because I'm watching you guys, I know where you're sat. I can see a couple from where I'm at.
We're showing average at the minute.
Yeah. So look, the answer to the question is actually a very long-winded one, so I'll try and be very succinct. But like Graham said, you have to understand that security are your strongest link in your chain, because they're going to be the ones that come to tell you and then if we all boil down what security really means to us, responding to incidents that happen to us, they're going to be the ones that come to you and tell you when your tools haven't picked something up. If this is something as simple as a fish, they're going to be the ones that come to you and say, hey, I've got this fish, can you help deal with it? If this is something as more complex as international fraud, they're probably going to be the ones that notice it first of all. They're going to come to you. So from my perspective, with the 80,000 colleagues that we have at Marks & Spencer, and I'll talk about something very specific that we're doing, it's about making them realise what it is they do for Marks & Spencer from a security perspective. Now, for the last couple of years, we've been working on a cultural change program within M&S because, the reality is we were audited, and when we were audited, it was quite obvious that not everybody understood their part to play in security. So everyone recognised that security is important, and if I was in front of an auditorium this size with M&S colleagues and I said, who thinks security is important? They'd all go, yeah, because it's obvious, right? But then when you talk to them on one-to-one basis, you say, okay, how does that relate to what you actually do on your day job? They struggle. And that realistically is the most important part. So our cultural change program is about addressing that balance, making sure that they can actually understand what it is that they do. And in some cases, we need to tell them because it's not something they normally do. If you consider M&S, we've got store colleagues, we've got distribution colleagues that work in warehouses and factories. We've got people who drive trucks for us, lorries, and then we've got people who work in head office, and then we've got cybersecurity people. We've got the whole range of people, and there's a different journey for each of them. So you have to tailor your program. But you have to tailor it to the lowest common denominator. You have to try and work out what those buckets are, work out where the opportunities for development are, and then, more importantly, measure that change so you know when you're successful. And the way that we're measuring our change, something that we've done, I can talk about now, that we've done in M&S, is we quite simply sent out a phishing email. So we've got a red team at M&S, absolutely fantastic. They sent out a very good series of phishes. They sent out 4 phishes over a period of 4 weeks. Unfortunately, I'm not going to quote the number because I know some people in the press will put it down and say M&S falls for phishes. Dan, yeah. But what happens when we noticed there was a higher than expected number of phishes that were clicked on and colleagues interacted with it. So we saved up those names and we did it 4 times. What we noticed, they were actually common offenders, people that would do it all the time. So we targeted them and we've gone back to them again. Now, we're looking at it quite seriously. Because these colleagues are falling into these phishes, we're considering taking away their email rights until they can actually not fall for phishes. So, because they're the weakest link truly in this case with phishes. But this will all culminate in a show in an auditorium similar to this. We've got a 400-seat auditorium this Thursday with all those colleagues who clicked through the fish and actually sent it onto the cybersecurity team. Did the thing that we wanted them to do. So positive confirmation to them to say, well done, you've done exactly what you're supposed to do. And we've got a chap called James Friedman come along to do a Man of Steel show, which some of you would have seen before. And he's customised it a little bit towards M&S. So it's a reward for those colleagues that are actually doing the right thing. Now what we're hoping to get out of that, as well as the other culture change aspects we're doing, is that they will start talking about this, back in the office. We're taking 400 out of 4,000 colleagues in head office, and hopefully they will start talking about it to their colleagues and saying, this security thing, there are positives. Look for the fishes and do the right thing, and maybe they'll reward you with a trip to a West End show in the evening. So that's what we're doing.
So that's kind of having ambassadors and people like that to spread the security message.
It is, but it's taken that and putting it on steroids. We're not targeting specific people in particular areas that you would normally do with a security champion or ambassador. We're making everybody an ambassador.
Yeah.
And that's the way to address the security challenge. And then when you see that dichotomy growing of those people that are really good at security and those people that aren't, you'll notice that starts to squeeze. And then we take more punitive actions against them, and that's where we maybe take their email away from them until they stop clicking on phishing links, which will be immediate if we take their emails away from them.
John?
So if I could take a slightly contrarian view, clearly I buy into the philosophy that people are at the center of security. But actually it's because of that I'm also going to say that if you're going to follow a digital transformation, don't persist in asking people to do things which are actually contrary to the way people naturally use technology. And phishing is actually a great example. And by the way, we do, the same phishing tests. And in fact, we have just started disabling the email temporarily of those people who are fourth-time offenders on clicking on email links. And it certainly does get the message home in a very tough way. But actually, my broader view, and this certainly applies in terms of our interaction with our customers, and I talked about digital transformation being extending the business process out to the customer. If we think we're going to keep them and us secure by having them stop ever clicking on insecure links, still less asking them not to click on links, because frankly that's the way you interact with the web through the mobile UI. If we think we can solve security or be secure that way, I think we've got another thing coming. So for me, and I'm just using phishing as an example, for me, part of the journey for the security professional on digital transformation is looking for ways to take some of the dependency on users away from them by either designing different ways of doing things, as of course been debated for decades about passwords and alternative authentication. We have a great opportunity now, of course, with almost universal fingerprint authentication. But, it's not easy, I know, but we need to make life more natural for ordinary people, both who work for us and those who don't, but who do business with us, make it more natural on as many fronts as we can. We'll be better, more secure if we can do that.
So embedding it into their behaviour and
well,
having that,
actually, getting to a place where I don't care if there's a malicious link that comes in on an email to either my staff member or to a customer, and he clicks on it. Getting it to a stage where there are protective mechanisms upline in that sort of interaction chain with the customer, which stops the worst thing happening.
Okay, thank you. So we have a number of questions coming in. Sorry, I'm pointing over here. This is the monitor that's telling me about the questions that are coming in. So we seem to have a couple around Agile, so if you'll allow me to ask a question there. So how do you achieve security by design in an Agile or DevOps environment? Would anybody like to take that one first? As CIO, maybe, Graham, you could start with that?
It's quite tricky, actually, if your development team haven't been trained in that way, aren't thinking in that way. And when you're putting pressure on them to say, right, we've got a race this weekend, we need a drop of code by Thursday, get on with it, and they see adding security by design is slowing them down if it's not natural to them. So I think we're getting to the point where you've got to get to your developers a lot earlier and get them into that mindset of thinking fairly early in their career. And so it's focusing again on the human aspects from my point of view, and making sure that your coders and the testers who are sitting right next to them are in that mindset just without even having to think about it. It's just part of who they are. So that's what we've been doing in terms of our agile development.
Agile and DevOps are pretty much one and the same thing. You have DevOps in an agile environment, so it's not really an or question, it's an and. But in terms of how we do it, we bake the responsibility for cybersecurity into the first line of defence. So I'm talking about the internal, the 3 lines of defence that your board may be more familiar with. with the first line people being the doers, second line the checkers, and the third line people that check the checkers and the doers. And by making sure that in the case of the software engineers, I love software engineers, they don't ruin my evenings at all, but making sure the software engineers know exactly what they need to do to code securely so that they are as good as the red team, for example, in identifying insecure code, and then avoiding that, or at least having the choice to avoid it if they want to. You might be surprised. That is the way to deal with it. And then if you've gone the whole hog with DevOps, that should be fine, because the people that are actually making the changes, not just the software engineers, but the people that are responsible for making sure that particular product is up and running, they also know about security. They know enough security to know when they don't know enough, and that they then come to you and ask for assistance. So making sure you understand your 3 lines of responsibility, making sure that people at the first line know enough about security to know when they don't know enough, and then making sure that your second line team, which is where you should all sit, actually understands that relationship and doesn't try and get in the way and doesn't try and block any changes.
Yeah, 100%. No, actually, 100% agree with all of that. Sorry to disappoint you. Yeah, I mean, the security, actually, it's an extra wrinkle on it, and it's about the way the security guy thinks. And I sort of hinted at it earlier when I was talking about how you have to turn up and be confident in taking risk decisions. I think a lot of getting good security out of an agile DevOps development stream is about enabling the developers. And from the security guy's point of view, it's about trusting the developers. They are going to deliver the security. You're not going to deliver the security. You're going to help them. You're going to help them in a couple of ways. One of the main ones that Lee's already mentioned, which is providing them with a security testing toolset, because, by the way, no fantastic developer or fantastic security guy gets it right first time. So you've got to test. So you provide them with a fantastic way of doing testing, preferably at the point of coding, on a rapid repeat cycle, and hopefully delivered from the cloud as well. So, there are products out there which enable you to do that. So that's one thing. You as a security guy, you're providing them with that tool set for them to use, not for you to use. But I think the second thing you do is you basically let go and allow them to do the security. So long as, again, you're there, going back to my original message, you've got to be there and you've got to be confident in telling them when they're doing it wrong. Because you're there, you're doing it early enough that it makes a difference. So if the design is fundamentally wrong, then you need to point that out. You need to point out the risk. Not say to them, the design's wrong, this is how you design it. You point out the risk, which leads them to the decision, oh, the design was wrong, I need to design it a different way.
So that, if we can just have the results of the second poll back on the screen, please. This is about culture, and I think that's it's built into it, isn't it, really? That, over half of you in the audience today believe that the security culture at your organisation is average. And there's a few organisations believe it's very mature or mature, so I think that, I can't quite see the numbers there, but I think it comes to around 23%, so nearly a quarter believe that they're mature or better, or very mature. And then there's quite a number of organisations, around a quarter, that are poor or they don't even know what the security culture is like. So back to the questions that have been coming in, and there are issues there. So one of them is, how do you deal with development managers who under Agile shield their teams and see security as an impediment? And I guess that's true in the organisations where the culture is average or below average. I mean, how might you deal with that in this case?
That's a really good question. Of course, it's about motivations, isn't it? Traditionally, development managers are motivated to deliver function points to the business. That's how they get brownie points. Function points, preferably to time and to budget, although it's function points comes first. Typically, time and budget come very much second. And clearly, if you've got that historical culture, you're not going to change things overnight. I think one of the great things within GSK is there's been a recognition that not only does security need to adapt its approach, but the development community themselves need to adapt their mindset. And what we're finding is that as we look out to the development community, as part of natural refresh, we're finding a generation of developers, including development managers, who really get security. They don't know all the techie detail that we do. We remain experts. We have our purpose still in life, thank goodness. But they get security, and they're prepared to give security almost equal weighting with business function points. So that's when it gets easy. In between those two, in between the reality of the most of my career, the reality of the dialogue with developers has been about, don't talk to me about security. And then finally they say, oh, this is the last thing to check on the development checklist, and it's a pen test. Okay, can we do a pen test? Okay, you do a pen test. Here's everything that's wrong. Go away. There's still a lot of that to work through. And I'm a realist. I'm not going to single-handedly, or even with my whole team, change that culture in GSK or any other organization I work with overnight. But the cultural change is coming from beneath, so that helps. And some tough conversations help as well. And I can tell you that I've been delighted by the number of CIOs that I've shared conversations with and platforms with, that there's an appetite at that level of the development stack, if I call it that, to actually get really quite serious about the delivery of insecure code.
Any different views from the
Don't put your hand up, whoever asked that question. But I'm going to take a controversial stance. If that's how you're doing agility, you're doing it wrong. Agile and security go hand in hand. Security under Agile is easier than doing it under a waterfall approach, or whichever methodology you choose to deliver change. And the reason I say that is I'll focus on 2 key points that you need to bake into the way that agility is done in your whole organisation. And if you've got this problem and you tackle this, I think you'll find it's a little bit easier. So you have a common weighting for agility, which is how you determine which story points are relevant within a particular product team. So which ones go to the very top of the backlog? And I'm talking about not a Kanban approach to agility, I'm talking about a Scrum approach to agility. If in that common weighting you have already got security in there, so whichever agile team you've got that overarchingly sets the agility focus within the business, you have security metrics, so that security goes to the very top, or at least nearer to the top than, say, business improvement or customer efficiency or whatever the metric measures. Then naturally, when the backlog is set, the security story points will go to the very top, because in that sprint, you've got security at the very top. So what will happen is the software engineers, or whichever engineers are working in, 'cause it's not just software engineers that use Scrum and agility, it could be your marketing team, they will pick that up, and they will go to the Scrum Master and say, yeah, we can do that, because we can see the benefit to the business of that. So if you don't have that conversation, and the Scrum Masters are getting in the way and saying, well, we downgraded it onto the backlog, that's because you haven't done agility right. And the other part to tie into this is about cybersecurity incidents. So when you're doing this approach and you're looking at your story points, which is how we measure we add weight to which one is the most important in the backlog, then reserve a piece in every single sprint for security incidents or security audits, and stuff that you would need to do on an ongoing basis. Now that will be like music to the ears of the software engineers or the engineers working on it and the Scrum Master, because immediately what you're doing is you're saying, of the total amount of story points that your colleagues can address, let's say is 100, we are reserving 10, and that has been brought into across your business by your CIO, who runs agility in this sense for technology. Then what they will naturally do is they will start working on the stuff that was 10 further down. So instead of security going straight to the bottom, security stays at the very top. And it means then if there is an incident or there's an urgent audit finding that needs to be addressed, or you found some security vulnerability in the system, you need to address it, then you go straight to the very top, and it pushes off the bottom of the backlog the stuff that is less important. So the reason I say you're doing it wrong is not because you haven't implemented agility, you just haven't implemented agility with security. If you do that, and you do it the way I just described, you'll find it a much easier conversation, because, to John's point earlier, you're not working against the way that people want to work, you're working with the way that Agile is supposed to work. And when you understand agility, you'll understand how to do security with it.
Thank you. Graham, there's another question coming about third-party developers. I guess that it applies to third-party solutions. So how do you ensure your third-party developers know how to deliver secure code in an agile environment? And I think that I've read plenty of reports recently that have said a third-party way in is an easy way in, or an easier way in, should I say, to attack organisations. So how do you deal with that? Williams?
I think more than 50% of our development resource is outsourced, so it's third parties who are providing solutions for us. I think sometimes we hold them to a higher standard than we hold our internal developers, actually, because there's contracts and it goes through legal, and so we tend to have baked into the whole process that we agree with them up front, and we accept that there's a cost to that, a protection layer around it that perhaps we don't put on our internal people.
Thank you. So we've just got a few minutes left. I love this question. What's your worst nightmare? I think we're talking about the digital transformation and security here, but maybe Graham, do you want to start with this?
So I hate answering this question because people like that make it seem like a challenge then, and they put it out. So our job is to protect that Formula One car.
Yeah.
And so the worst nightmare is that someone gets onto that car. But actually, we spend a lot of time and effort protecting what is our core asset, and every company has a core asset. And we're actually taking what we know about protecting the Formula One car, which is essentially an IoT device that goes around the track, and we're applying that now to autonomous vehicle projects, and we're working with Thales on a project to secure the autonomous vehicle platform. And so, yeah, the worst case scenario is an external person getting onto a vehicle that they shouldn't. Now, don't put that out there. Oh, man.
So, we are very clear in GSK that our two most valuable pieces of information, types of information, are drug trials data and patient data, where patients are directly involved with us. And we're moving in a digitally transformed world to having sort of continuous interaction and continuous exchange of data in pursuit of both those drug trials, but also things like connected devices to continuously release insulin or drugs into a patient's system. And clearly, from my point of view, from the whole company's point of view, the worst thing that could happen would be for the security of those, that data and that connectivity to be compromised. And we work really focused way, night and day, to protect those as our crown jewels.
Could I just ask the screen to return to the results of the first poll question, please, which was about the cybersecurity, an enabler or a hindrance of digital transformation projects. And absolutely agree with the majority of the audience that it's both. But it's great to see that we can have enabler as the second. So, 90% of us believe that security can be an enabler of digital transformation. So I think that's fantastic news. Just as I close the panel, I was going to ask for comments on that.
I think you're all wrong. Why not? It's not both. It's not an enabler. It's certainly not a hindrance. It's neither. It's part of the agile journey, which is what I've been trying to get across. Yes, is it an enabler? Because yes, it kind of helps you. Obviously, any part of a digital journey that adds value to it is an enabler. Security is no difference. Is it a hindrance? Well, that's purely down to a perspective position, whether or not you want to work with security because you've forgotten to talk to security in the first place. It's just part of it.
I go further. I say you can't do digital transformation without security. It's an essential part of it.
You've got a credit card, you can. As I sometimes find out, people can go and buy a service, and then it can be seen. So I'm going to disagree with you just because it's a good thing to do. So a lot of people would say it's a hindrance because it slows down the things that they want to do. Even within Williams, I've got 2 programs at the moment that they would argue I'm slowing it down because they didn't come to me early enough, to go to John's point. They come to me at the point that they need something switching on or a firewall rule changing so they can get access to a service.
Absolutely, so good old shadow IT comes to the fore again. Okay, so I think that's it now. I would love to ask some more of the questions that you've all put forward, but we're out of time now. So thank you all very much for your questions, and thank you very much for joining us. And please join me.